Good morning, children. Welcome back to the English class. Today we are going to continue with our topic on summary writing. I had asked you to write what a summary is, how to write a summary, and qualities of a summary from the video in your English notebooks. I hope everyone has done it and has read it carefully and knows what a summary is and how to write it. This year, you are going to be asked to write a summary of any poem you have read. Till now, we have read 3 poems from your real English book. Do you remember what are those 3 poems? The first one done this year is trees. Then the second one, the old Gumby cat. And the third one, the raven and the fox. Till now we have done these 3. So you may get to write a summary of any of these 3. We have already done trees. Now first, let us do a quick recap of what a summary is. When the instruction says write a summary of this text, it could be a prose or a poem. Later on, it will be something which you have not read before. It is unseen and you have to read it there and then write a summary. But for this year, you will get a poem which you have already read and you will have to write a summary. Now, what are you supposed to write? I hope everyone remembers. Summary means writing it in very short or in brief. Now, if I read the poem and then write just maybe 2 or 3 sentences, just brief sentences or a brief paragraph, it doesn't mean that it is a summary. It has to be short, but it has to include all the key points or the important points. If you leave out the important points and in these 2 to 3 sentences or in the brief paragraph you write 3 sentences or 4 sentences, it means you are writing in brief but you have not written all the important points. So this will not be called a summary. A summary must include all the important points or the key words and the key points mentioned in the poem or the prose and in brief. It has to be short. Approximately 1/3 of the original text. Now, how to write everything important and that too in short? Yes, if you have paid attention to what I said in the video, you have to first read the poem very quickly. Just glance through what the poem says or a prose passage says and get an idea what it is about. As soon as you read quickly the poem Trees, you know it is something which is on the effect of seasons and the relationship of trees and human beings. Now, if you read the other poems also quickly, you should get an idea what is the main theme or what the poem is talking about or the passage, an essay, an article or a story is talking about. Then you have to read it once again. Carefully this time, not quickly, slowly and carefully. And while you are reading it or rereading it, You have to underline the words which are the key words, which are important, and which you cannot leave while writing a summary. You can leave the unimportant lines, you can leave the unimportant points. You can jot it down on a piece of paper, or all these points should be in your mind. And after you have done it, then you have to use these keywords or the key points to write a brief paragraph in short, which will be your summary of that original text. Now, when I am combining these words and the notes I have made to frame sentences, I have to keep in mind two or three very important points. First, the sentence should be grammatically correct. I cannot frame a sentence which is grammatically wrong, which has wrong grammar, wrong spellings, or wrong punctuation marks. So I must have something which is grammatically correct with the correct punctuation mark and the correct words. Spellings should be correct and grammar should be correct. I should pay attention specially to subject verb agreement. That means whether the verb agrees with the subject or not. We have already done this in classes before, so we should know which verb agrees with which subject. Then what I need to do is that I need to pay attention that it should be brief. It should not be as long as the original text. It should be much, much shorter. And the third thing is that I should have all the important points in the summary. The title has to be there. Sometimes they don't ask you for a title, but you should write a title in most cases. Then the first sentence should be an introductory sentence which tells you from which poem the lines you are summarizing are taken, who is the poet, and what is the main idea or the theme of the poem. After writing this main sentence, you have to write a few more supporting sentences or helping sentences which tell you that this is the important thing in the poem and it has to be included, and the reader knows that these were the key points the poet or the writer has dealt with in the poem or the story. And then, of course, you cannot write anything from outside. You have to stick to the original text and you have to write it in your own words. You cannot copy the words as they are from the poem. Of course, a word here and there is okay, but we are not going to copy it exactly like it is in the poem or in the story or in the essay. Now we had seen in the last video how to write the summary of a poem, Trees. And as you saw and then wrote in your notebooks, in the first sentence after the title, we mentioned the name of the poem, the name of the poet, and the main idea or the theme of the poem. Then we took it one stanza at a time. and wrote a line each about each stanza. Now, the poem is 15 lines long, and so in the end, we summed it up. We concluded the summary by writing one more sentence, and that was approximately 5 sentences. That means it was one third of the original which we read. Now, today we are going to see how to write the summary of the second poem in our text book, that is the Old Gumby Cat. Please open your books on page number 35. It is lesson number 5 in your Real English book, The Old Gumby Cat. Now, do you remember who is the poet? If you don't, turn to page 46 and see the name of the poet. It is T.S. Eliot, and also see the spelling. You can't afford to write wrong spellings in a summary. Your marks get deducted. So the Old Gumby Cat, I'll just read the first 2 stanzas. We are going to see and think while we are reading what are the important keywords which I have to remember in my mind. I have a Gumby cat in mind. Her name is Jenny Any Dots. Her coat is of the tabby kind with tiger stripes and leopard spots. All day she sits upon the stair or on the steps or on the mat. She sits and sits and sits and sits, and that's what makes a Gumby cat. Now, while I was reading this, which were the important words or the key words which you may have underlined or which you may have thought about in your poem? The first one, of course, is the Gumby cat. The second, Jenny Any Dots, because the name is important. Then the coat, tabby kind, and she sits and sits. Now, how will you use these words? Sits and sits means most of the time she keeps on sitting. Now, how will you, like, these are the keywords. How will you join them? How will you expand on them and frame sentences so that we get the summary of this stanza? And if you are given only this stanza and no other stanza, then how will you start the first sentence or the introductory sentence? The Old Gumby Cat is a poem written by T.S. Eliot, and it tells us about the habits of the Gumby cat. Or you could write, it tells us what a Gumby cat is like. You can't write anything more because you have been given only one stanza. You may know that the impression the family has is wrong, but here in this stanza, only the lines which are given, you have to pay attention to that. So now, how will you write the summary? We said in the introductory line that in the poem The Old Gumby Cat, written by T.S. Eliot, he talks about the habits of the old Gumby cat. Now, what will be your second sentence? The old Gumby cat is called Jenny Any Dots, or you could write Jenny Any Dots is the name of the old Gumby cat. She has a coat, or her coat is of tabby kind. Now, if you don't remember tabby, you remember striped, you can write her coat is striped. If you forget striped, then you could write that it has some stripes and spots. But please do not write everything. It has to be short. So you have to describe the coat. Then all day she sits upon the stair or on the steps or on the mat. She sits and sits and sits, and that's what makes a Gumby cat. Now, how will you write it in short? She sits in different places the whole day long, or she keeps on sitting during daytime. Now, how many sentences we have? We have four. So, around two sentences are enough. Now, if I want two sentences, then what will I have to do? I'll have to combine, because if I have them separately, I am going to have three sentences. So what I'm going to do is, the Gumby cat is called Jenny Any Dots, one sentence. And then I will say her coat is of the tabby kind and she keeps sitting the whole day, or she has a striped coat and she keeps sitting the whole day. That's it for the first stanza. Now we come to the second stanza, which is longer. It has 8 lines. So what will be around one third? You don't have to be exactly one third. It doesn't have to be exactly one third, but around one third. So it is 8 lines long. The stanza is 8 lines. So around 3 lines, because one third will be around 3 lines or 3 sentences. You could combine the qualities, you could combine other things to get just 3 sentences. But when the day's hustle and bustle is done, then the Gumby cat's work is but hardly begun. And when all the family is in bed and asleep, she tucks up her skirts to the basement to creep. She is deeply concerned with the ways of the mice, their behaviors not good and their manners not nice. So when she has got them lined up on the matting, she teaches them music, crocheting and tatting. Now if I write all these, it's going to be too long. And in a summary, I am supposed to write it in short and include all the key points or the key words. Now, what are the key words that should have been in your mind? When the day's hustle and bustle is done, you can underline it and then you can make it shorter while writing a summary. Her work is but hardly begun. Again, another important point. But then you have to make it shorter. You can combine these two and get one sentence. And when all the family is in bed and asleep, she tucks up her skirts to the basement to creep. Now, asleep, family asleep, you have to remember. And she goes to the basement, that also you should know. Now, she is deeply concerned with the ways of the mice, their behaviors not good and their manners not nice. Behavior not good, you can remember these words. Now we come to the next page, the last 2 lines of the second stanza. So when she has got them lined on the matting, she teaches them music, crocheting and tatting. You could underline music, crocheting and tatting, but we may just use one word for all these three together. She teaches them some skills or some useful skills that will sum up all these what she teaches. So now how will you write the summary of the second stanza? That when the day is over, then the Gumby cat's work begins. Or the Gumby cat starts working when the day gets over. You could even write the Gumby cat's work begins in the evening or in the when the day is over. And when all the family is in bed and asleep, so when the family is asleep, then she starts her work. So, sorry, you could combine all these three and write it in one sentence. Then the second thing mentioned in this stanza is that she is worried about the behavior of the mice because it's a plural, or you could write that she does not appreciate, she does not like the manners of the mice. And so what does she do because she's worried about their manners? She starts teaching them certain useful skills. Now you'll have to combine all these sentences which you have framed in your mind. You can combine them and write them as three sentences because our stanza is almost 9 lines. Of course, it's 8 lines, but roughly we can take it as 9. So how will you write that when the day is over, the Gumby cat starts working? Or the Gumby cat's work begins when the day is over and the family is asleep. One sentence. Then the second one, she starts working when the day is over and she's worried about the manners of the mice or the behavior of the mice. You could even write that she is worried about the behavior of the mice and so she starts working on their behavior when the family is asleep. And the last sentence could be that she starts teaching them some useful skills to keep them busy. As you all know, if you have a hobby, you love to do some drawing or painting or dance, you are going to be busy and so you will not get into mischief. You will have no time to be bad mannered or to do mischief. So that's it for the second stanza. Now let us take the second half. I have a Gumby cat in mind. Her name is Jenny Any Dots. Her equal would be hard to find. She likes the warm and sunny spots. All day she sits beside the hearth or on the bed or on my hat. She sits and sits and sits and sits, and that's what makes a Gumby cat. Now, certain things are repeated in this stanza. If you are writing the summary of the whole poem, you don't need to repeat the things which were mentioned in the first stanza. But if you are asked to write the summary of only this stanza, not from the beginning, then you will have to mention that her name is Jenny Any Dots or she's called Jenny Any Dots and she likes to sit the whole day. If you take it separately and you are asked to write only the summary of this stanza. So if you are continuing, that is writing from the beginning, then you will go directly to the line which says that there is no other cat like Gumby cat. She likes warm and sunny spots and she sits beside the hearth or on the bed or on the poet's hat. Or if you think it is too long, you could even write that she likes warm and sunny spots, and so she sits in different spots which are warm and sunny. Now got it? And but if it is only the only stanza, then you will have to mention that she is called Jenny Any Dots and she loves to keep sitting the whole day. But if it is a continuation, then we don't do that. But when the day's hustle and bustle is done, then the Gumby cat's work is but hardly begun. As she finds that the mice will not ever keep quiet, she is sure it is due to irregular diet. And believing that nothing is done without trying, she sets right to work with her baking and frying. She makes them a mousse cake of bread and dried peas and a beautiful fry of lean bacon and cheese. Now, this is a long stanza. Now, please count the lines. How many lines it has? It has again 8 lines. So we can take it approximately as 9. And if we are writing the summary of this stanza, it has to be 3 sentences. And as I told you before, you can use conjunctions to combine sentences, words like and, but, because, as, and combine or join sentences to have a proper summary. And of course, you have to pay attention to the tense. So now the poet again has repeated these lines. When the day's hustle and bustle is done, then the Gumby cat's work is but hardly begun. Now, if you are continuing from the beginning, we don't need to repeat. If it is the only stanza, you can write this as the first stanza, first line of your summary or the first sentence of your summary, that when the day's work has got over, the work done by Gumby Cat begins, or the work of Gumby Cat begins. And if it is a continuation, we leave that and then go directly to as she finds the mice. So she is sure it is due to irregular diet. Now she finds that the mice are very noisy. They make a lot of noise and she thinks it is because of the unhealthy diet. And she believes that nothing can be achieved without trying, and so she tries to work on their diet and does some baking and frying. You can just say she does some cooking and she makes a lot of dishes for them which she thinks is going to improve their behavior. We don't mention fry of lean bacon and cheese, mousse cake, bread, dried peas, because then the summary would be too long and you will be writing almost everything in the summary. So remember to write it in short. And the last 2 lines, of course, are so for old Gumby cats, let us now give 3 cheers, on whom well ordered households depend, it appears. Now, these 2 lines alone will not come for summary because then 2 lines are very short. You may get these 2 lines with the stanza that is above it. So you may add this to it, but when you are adding this, then you have 2 more lines, so it makes it 10 lines. So you could even write around 4 sentences. So for old Gumby cat, let us now give 3 cheers. The poet wants to give 3 cheers, that means to praise or appreciate the old Gumby cat. And why he wants to give 3 cheers? Because it is because of Gumby cats like her that the households are in order, because she keeps the mice busy. Now, that was the summary, how you should write. Now, the best way is to write it in very short, including all the important points. And if you know the meaning of a word, instead of using the word which is given in the poem, you could use the meaning if it is short. If it is too long, then we use the word itself. Now, children, today's homework I'm going to put in the ERP Prep app. You will have to write the summary of the poem, that is the Old Gumby Cat. First, count the number of lines and then divide it by 3. Then write approximately the number which is 1/3 of this, but you cannot leave anything important. You have to include the name of the poem, the name of the poet, the main theme of the poem. If you are writing the whole poem, the main theme. If you are writing the summary of a stanza, then the main point mentioned in the stanza. And please do it in your English notebook. Thank you, children. Till we meet next time with the summary of another interesting poem.